Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. This is the Red Hot Reds podcast, a podcast about the Cincinnati Reds for Reds fans by Reds fans. This is episode 1. Ricky, let's start the show.
Let's go.
This is the Red Hot Reds podcast. Here are your hosts, Ricky Logan and Roger Straz.
All right, Ricky. Welcome to the show, episode 1, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all those good things. We're just getting started with our first episode. We're really excited, really ready to go. Ricky's been all over the place talking about us already, getting the word out, getting the socials out. So really big ups to Ricky, for getting this going, getting the Facebook up, getting the X, getting Instagram, getting all the things. I'm not really good at social media, so I'm glad you're doing all these things because otherwise we'd be in trouble. We have one follower, it'd be my mom or my dad or something. But we are here. That's Ricky Logan. I'm Roger Straz. We're here, the Red Hot Reds podcast, episode 1. And Ricky, to start off the show, if anybody that's a real Reds fan knows what a scoreboard stumper is, we're going to start off the show with a scoreboard stumper. Are you ready for the first ever scoreboard stumper in our podcast history?
Let's do it.
All right. So I was looking up some trivia for the Reds, and it's hopefully not too hard, but you got to be a real Reds diehard to get probably a couple of these. But there have been 5 managers in Reds history that won a World Series as a manager before they took over as Reds manager. All right? 5 managers. Can you name all 5?
It's a good one.
Yeah. You can do some thought process. You can name some, if you need some hints, I can give you some hints.
One of them is going to be one we're going to talk about very shortly, Terry Francona.
Ding, ding, ding. Yes, Tito had won 2 World Series with the Red Sox before taking over the Reds this year. The others, there's one. He won it with the Mets as the Mets manager. You're familiar with Mets history.
Call this a scoreboard stumper for a reason.
Yeah, I mean the other names I didn't know either, so I'll rattle those off. I was just thinking maybe if you know your the 1986 Mets at all.
Oh man, drawing a blank.
The 86 Mets manager was Davey Johnson. And he managed
Johnson.
Yeah, he managed the Reds in the 90s, right, in the early 2000s, around that time.
He was the last manager we had that we won a playoff series with, wasn't he?
Yeah, that might be. Yeah, because 1990 is Lou Piniella, and he took over sometime after Lou. Yeah. There's 3 more managers, and to be fair, they won World Series before World War II.
So they predate us by a while.
Yeah, a little bit. I think you gotta be a real Reds historian to maybe get these. Got any ideas or calling mercy?
Calling mercy.
All right. The other 3 managers, and one you might have heard of. One is Bill McKechnie, which is the 1940s Reds winning manager. He won in 1925 as manager of the Pittsburgh Pirates. The other 2 is Frank Bancroft. He won with the Providence Grays, which is like in the 1800s. I think it was 1886. He won the World Series with Providence Grays. And then this guy you might have heard of, Charles Comiskey. He won a World Series as manager of St. Louis Browns, which are now the St. Louis Cardinals. Charles Comiskey, most notably known for owning the White Sox and bringing them kind of into relevance at the turn of the century, in 1900s. So they named the park after him, Comiskey Park. Just a little trivia for you there, and hopefully you got your juices flowing now to talk about our first topic, which the trivia tied in, Mr. Terry Francona. I guess, Ricky, if you can you bring yourself back to late September 2024 right about the time that the Red season, the playoff chances kind of went to 0%, and they fired David Bell, long-serving manager for the Reds, so it's 6 seasons. Fired David Bell, and then a couple weeks later, during I think it was the playoffs or the World Series, they announced Tito Francona as their new manager. How did you experience that? What were your thoughts? What were your feelings at that time?
Man, it was a roller coaster. When David Bell got fired, the first thing I thought was, who are the Castellinis going to pay for? Because they just extended David Bell the year prior. So I was thinking maybe they would go the cheaper route, maybe go for Skip Schumacher, maybe go for an older manager like Buck Showalter. And then, so I wrote an article on WeLikeSportsPC.com for the Reds manager search, and the number one person on my list was Terry Francona. But it was like long shot. You know, is Terry Francona even available? Would he want to come back? And if he did, would he want to even come here? And then 4 days later, the notification pops up that the Reds have hired Terry Francona as their new manager, and I just couldn't believe it. I thought I was dreaming. It just doesn't seem real.
Yeah, for sure. It was, I guess, the first amazing thing is that the Castellinis fired David Bell with a year to go on his contract. And the Castellinis are notorious for not wanting to pay people if they don't have to, or if their contract expires, there's the door type of deal. So to have the Castellinis kind of make that first step in September of 24 to say, David Bell, thank you for your service. We're gonna look somewhere else for the for the future. That was kind of the big kind of first thought that I had was like, wow, okay. So they're kind of serious. They're not going to like let David Bell play out 2025 on his last year of his contract and basically kind of just be like, okay, David, you took us as far as you can, see you later. And then just in the middle of the playoffs, like when all the other teams are, like the Mets are having a good playoff run. Obviously, the Dodgers and the Yankees had good playoff runs. Like the Reds were the talk of the town hiring Francona in the middle, I think October, right? So that was, to have it be your number one guy and get him. And also, there was some questions about his health because he took off a whole year, right? After, managing the Guardians to his, basically being a mid-level or mid-market team, kind of like Cincinnati, to like a division winner almost every single year, taking a year off, kind of getting his health back in order. There were kind of question marks like, oh, could we get him, right? Like the whispers. And they did. And I mean, now it's kind of like a whole new day, whole new light on the Reds because they got a guy who's won before, right? They got a guy who's been there. Not, David Bell, baseball lifer, Brian Price, baseball lifer, guys that are good baseball managers, but they haven't won the big one, right? So to have kind of that now managing your young players who haven't won divisions, who haven't won playoff games, I mean, that's kind of like the best thing you could do is to give them that leadership, that voice in the locker room so that you can basically hopefully get to that next level.
Yeah, I mean, Francona's a guy that is the perfect manager for the Reds. You look at Cleveland, they don't spend any money, and he had that team fighting for a World Series or at least deep playoff runs every single year. And now he has a team with budding young superstars, Ellie De La Cruz, Matt McClain, Christian Encarnacion Strand. I'm going to throw out Will Benson because I think he has potential. Spencer Steer, Noelvi Marte. He's got guys. And this might be his best situation for that since Boston. And he's the best manager the Reds have had, arguably, since Lou Piniella.
Wow.
And you could throw in Dusty Baker.
Yeah.
But the franchise wasn't ran the way it is now when Dusty Baker was managing. I would argue with the talent that Dusty Baker had, if they were smart about their trades and free agent signings, that I think they could have won something, especially in 2012. Like, I'm just excited, man. He's the perfect manager for this situation.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's perfect too because if you remember 2024 and 2023, the young guys coming up making base running errors, making fielding errors, right? Throwing to the wrong cutoff man, like that kind of stuff feels like it falls kind of on the manager. And David Bell kind of had that reputation of being a player's manager. He's not going to come down hard on guys. He's not going to, bust their chops if they get caught stealing when they shouldn't be running in certain situations, right? I feel that this is, again, like you said, the perfect situation where you can have an established voice that players are going to listen to and be like, yeah, cut that out. We're gonna play fast, but we're gonna play smart type of deal. As opposed to just kind of like it felt like the Reds and Ellie and everybody were just kind of like stealing any chance they can. Maybe taking the extra base when they shouldn't type of deal, giving away outs, striking out. Like hopefully, maybe not in this year they're going to correct everything, right? They probably won't, but in the next 2-3 years, hopefully sooner, they can correct all those young, stupid mistakes and become like a solid baseball club. Like, unfortunately, like the Brewers. The Brewers are kind of example of a team that overachieves with not a lot of talent because they don't make those errors. They don't make those mistakes. And hopefully Francona can be that guy to steer the ship.
Yeah, I mean, somehow the Brewers always win 85 to 90 games with really one or two all-stars. Yeah, I mean, Francona is just that guy. You look, I don't know if you saw Jonathan India's latest comments. He said, basically players walked all over David Bell. There was no accountability. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if there was accountability, maybe last year they could have made a playoff run. Unfortunately, injuries held him back. But, I'm just so excited to have Terry Francona as a Cincinnati Red.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the rest of MLB media kind of feels the same way because you got Buster Olney talking about how they're the most improved team when, they didn't sign Jurickson Profar. They didn't sign Shohei Ohtani. You know what I mean? They upgraded, in certain positions, as I think one analyst said that they've raised their floor, meaning they're hopefully not going to have like the problems with depth where Santiago Espinal has to play center field or something, right? They're going to have hopefully the depth to be able to put major leaguers in their right positions. But I don't think that this next part, the FANGRAPHs and PECOTA, I don't think they agree with Buster Olney too much about the Reds' chances going forward, if you know what I mean, in terms of being competitive, winning 85 to 90 games. So let's move on to the next topic of FANGRAPHs win predictions. I don't know about you, Ricky. Are you a big analytics guy? Are you kind of how are you more kind of the old school? We'll feel it out.
I'm kind of a hybrid. I look at some stats. I'll look at wins above replacement. I'll look at OPS plus. I'm not a big fan of batting average and balls in play and stuff like that. To me, it's like, well, if you put it in play and you still get out, what's it matter? But I get that side of it. I understand it. But, we didn't use those stats for 100 years, and then here we are. But what about you?
We grew up in the Moneyball era watching baseball, right? Where it went from the 90s where guys were on roids hitting the ball as far as they could, right? So like, that was kind of like not analytical baseball. That was just like see ball, hit ball, right? As hard, as fat or far as you can hit it. But when the Athletics, right, had that Moneyball type situation, they were trying to get like an edge on teams because they didn't have the talent. Now, what has happened is that all that analytical kind of data, the formulas and stuff like that, now the Dodgers have that, like that capability to crunch those kind of numbers. Now the Yankees have that capability to have those analytics to see which player is kind of more valuable than another, as opposed to looking at the old stats of just like hits and on base percentage. Now it's kind of more advanced, but everybody's got it, so there's no real advantage to having the analytics. I feel it's kind of like everyone's not necessarily on the same playing ground, but they have all the same technology to see what their players are doing. So it to rely on it to make all the decisions, I guess, is kind of where I kind of stop short. Is the whole narrative that the manager is basically just a middleman to tell the front office or the analytics team to come down and like phone call like, hey, actually take this guy out now. It's like, I feel like though with the hiring of Francona, that kind of is kind of the opposite of that. Like he'll have the feel, he'll have the baseball feel of like, I know my guy, I know I shouldn't pull him out in the 4th inning when I know he can get this out and get us to the 5th type of thing. So I understand that it's a big part of the game because it's a way to describe like what your team's doing well, what your team's deficiencies are, right? But I don't know if it should make all the decisions on the field. You know what I mean? Maybe it'll your lineup, right, of like lefty, righty, and how these guys hit this guy on that certain day, right? And those advanced statistics can really help with that. But it shouldn't be like, oh, I need to pull, my starter in the 4th inning because he doesn't go through the lineup really well the 3rd time around. It's like, yeah, but like if you want to build that like that faith and that trust in that your starter that he can go deep in games when you need him in the playoffs, when you need him down the stretch in August and September, you kind of have to have that baseball feel. You kind of have to be able to know about the game more than just on the statistical level.
Yeah, and I feel like the only real advantage nowadays with analytics is that it gives teams like the Dodgers, the Mets, and the Yankees a bigger advantage because they can find that out and spend the money on the player that they want to get also. They could get that star player and maybe overpay for someone who has good analytical value. I'm not a huge fan of it. I didn't like that there was plenty of times where I thought Hunter Green could go another inning or 2 innings, and he would pull him because he was at 85 or 90 pitches. And like Hunter Green needs to be unleashed because I think if he could do what he's capable of, he's a perennial Cy Young candidate.
Yeah, for sure. And the last thought I had about the FanGraphs and PECOTA predictions is that as much as we kind of rail against it as we just have, I think in 2024, FanGraphs had the Reds winning 78 games and taking a step back from the 80-win season in 2023. And then the Reds ended up winning 77 games. And so sometimes these predictions, the FanGraphs, I think the one stat that I think hopefully or the trend that ends up happening a lot is the 1-run game stat, where the Reds in 2023 won the most 1-run games. They had like 31 wins or something like that in 1-run games. And then in 2024, the next year, they had like 16 wins and 30 losses in 1-run games. So hopefully the trend in 2025 is that we have the pitching to hold teams back and the offense to win these 1-run games and kind of flip that statistic again for 2025, which will, if we can do that, the Reds will be, I think, in those close games down the stretch in September and August and be able to really compete for hopefully the division or at least a wild card spot.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, 2023, FanGraphs had them losing over 100 games or 101 games. And
Yeah.
I don't think they expected the power of the Reds farm system to come through.
No, yeah. 2023 was just June of 2023 was a good month. It was a really good month.
It's one that we'll remember for a very long time.
Yeah, for sure. 12 games in a row. It's hard to forget that. That was a special time. Yeah. Talk about the minors, right? I feel like
let's talk about the Reds prospects.
Yeah. We have been seeing them in spring training. I mean, we're diehard fans enough to know that there's stuff going on special in Dayton. Definitely special stuff going on Daytona and Chattanooga. We just don't live as close to those areas to see it in person and see, all that stuff. But what is your what has been your takeaway this spring, last year, these prospects that these Reds have? What has been your thoughts?
I think that Cam Collier and Sal Stewart are untouchable. That is my main takeaway. Anybody else, if you have to, I'm okay with it. But Sal Stewart and Cam Collier are my untouchables because in 2 years you could have an infield of Cam Collier at first, Sal Stewart at third, Encarnacion Strand at DH, Elliott short, McLean at second. I mean that's unreal.
Yeah.
And if anybody else works out, let's just say Hector Rodriguez can come up and be, a good platoon player, or, throw in pitchers. Chase Petty becomes a top 3 rotation pitcher.
Yeah.
I'm hyped about the farm system, man. I really am. What about you? Who's someone that you're really keeping an eye on?
I mean, Cam Collier is a good one. The 2024 Futures All-Star Game MVP. I mean, big shout out to him. Great stuff out of him, and he's definitely destined for the big club sooner than later. Definitely. I mean, it's kind of weird because he came up last year, and the way baseball rookie rules work is like if you're called up in a certain amount of games, it doesn't count toward your rookie status. So like Rhett Lauder comes to mind. He came up last year, looked great. And I think the plan is for the Reds is that he starts in the minors so that if something should happen or they need the innings, even like as early as April or May, he's there, right? He's not necessarily already on the big club pitching every 5 days. He's 22 years old. So he definitely would be a guy I would watch for in the minors. And I hope he's in the minors. I hope he's in Louisville, not necessarily, start in the 26 man on opening day, because if that's the case, I feel it's because, someone's not ready to go. Someone's hurt, it's something might be going on with the starting rotation if Rhett Lauder's, in Cincinnati on March 27th. So my hope is that he'll be down there. He'll be pitching soon with his buddy from Wake Forest, Burns, pretty soon. And then, like you said, I guess my question is, because you said untouchable, and I guess the question I'm thinking right now is like, okay, say the Reds this year, 2025, we're getting close to the trade deadline in August, and they're ahead in the division, or they're like even with the Cubs, let's say, for example, for the division. Maybe they need one more starter. You know what I mean? Maybe they need a corner outfielder. Do you trade those guys then, or are you saying still no?
I'm probably leaning towards no. I hate being a prospect hugger, but Edwin Arroyo to me seems like he would be log jammed, in my opinion, unless he would move to third base in the short term. And like, you got guys that are higher on the prospect list that could be tradable, or even major league caliber players. Like, you could maybe move a Reese Hines packaged with maybe a Chase Petty if you were going to go get that stud outfielder. But I would even entertain the idea. I think Nick Kirby had mentioned it before about Spencer Steer for Alec Boehm from Philadelphia. But the only reason I don't like that as much is Steer can play everywhere, and he might not play it all well, but he plays it good enough to get by. But as far I just want to see Cam Collier and Sal Stewart in a Reds uniform. That's a duo I don't want to split up. Yeah,
for sure. I agree with you. And I guess I'm only kind of putting the screws to you because in all honesty, I think 2025 is going to be a good year for the Reds. I don't know if they're going to, like, they have the Cubs, I think, expected to win 90 games. They have like the Brewers in like that 85, 86 range. And actually, like, the FanGraphs and PECOTA had them finishing last in the division. Somehow the Pirates are going to be better. I mean, unless Paul Skeens is pitching 30
Every
starts.
game.
Yeah, or every game, yeah. Or every other day, like some sort of weird playoff scenario. I don't think the Pirates. What does Marty Brennaman always say? The Pirates will eventually realize that they're wearing a loser uniform and go back to that. What, you know what I mean? So I really don't see that happening. But I guess what I'm trying to say is like 2026 kind of seems to be, if I'm like looking inside the brain of Nick Kroll, of Brad Meter, of unfortunately Phil Castellini, like just kind of like looking in like to what they are really kind of after. I think they're trying to get to like 2026 where these young guys like McLean, Encarnacion Strand, Ellie are like in their third or fourth year, and then they're going to be solid baseball players. You're going to have, maybe add a couple pitchers or whatnot in the off season, but like 2026 might be the all-in chips, in my opinion. And as you know, we wrote a piece on it. After the 2026 season, it's possibly going to be a big lockout. So I think the Reds probably should at least push in all the chips by off season of 2026, so they can have a World Series before maybe the 27 season gets canceled or something like that.
That would be devastating.
That's another podcast to talk about all that shenanigans that's down the road. We're hopefully 2025 is going to be a good year, and we can rest our hats on that. But let's transition into the Reds off-season recap. How do you think? What's a move that you think could be an underrated move for this off-season? Underrated. I guess one that like they're not talking about too much. I feel like Jose Trevino as a defensive catcher. I know that's not like a sexy answer of like, oh yeah, we want to have good defensive catching. You know what I mean? But I mean, the game is about, getting 27 outs defensively and not giving away those 27 outs. And I'm not saying Jose Trevino is a great offensive player. I think he'll be a serviceable defensive player that will hopefully, be able to, work with our pitching staff, be able to have basically, because last year, I think, you probably remember the narratives, Stevenson was one of our best hitters, but he wasn't playing every day. I understand he wants to catch. He's come a long way with his catching. But if anything, with the days that he's not catching, he probably should be the DH, right? Just to keep his bat in the lineup, and especially with the Reds when they had, some injuries throughout the season, like Stevenson's on the bench because it's his off day to not catch. But it's like he's on the bench as opposed to being the number 3 or number 4 hitter. You know what I mean? When he's having like a great season. So I'd like to think that having Jose Trevino be that backstop, to be that defensive catcher on Stevenson's off days will allow him to basically keep hitting and be in the lineup more. And I mean, I guess best case scenario is that we don't hear about Jose Trevino and, basically Stevenson catches 120 games behind the plate and DHs for the other 30 or 40. And then it's like, boom, you know what I mean? Like that would be probably a, all-star type of season, I would imagine. But I think it's underrated. I mean, Luke Malley, great servant, North Kentucky guy. Just he couldn't hit. You know what I mean? At this level, he's been around, and I think he's now in Kansas City. But thank you for your service, Luke. But I think Jose will be a great backup to Stevenson.
Yeah, he's a really, I don't want to say great catcher. He's a really good, serviceable catcher. The only reason I think he got pushed out of New York is because of Austin Wells. And I believe he won a Gold Glove.
Yeah.
Like, he's a really good catcher. And I think if he could catch more, like you said, Stevenson could DH more. And, underrated, he played first base a lot in 2023 before he got hurt or recovering from injury. Yeah. So that helps out with the other guys as well. That could give Candelario a day off. They could give Encarnacion Strand a day off. So that's good. A move that I liked, I'm really liking this Austin Hayes move. Like, I think that he's been an above average hitter every year except for last year. And it turned out he had an undiagnosed kidney infection, and he looks healthy. He's crushing the ball in spring training, and he could be that guy that maybe not that power hitting outfielder we desired, but maybe he could at least make us happy.
Yeah.
And another guy is Gavin Lux. Gavin Lux is a solid move in my opinion also.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to detail, I think, down the road, we're going to have like an all about the infield portion of the Reds roster coming down the road. So we'll be talking definitely a lot more of Gavin Lux. I guess I probably won't be talking about too much about Jose Trevino unless we consider that the infield. I don't know. How does that work with the catchers? Do you know?
Yeah, we can include them.
Yeah, catchers are people too, right? You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, I think another move that, you know, it's not the sexiest move, but the Reds, you know, we're going to move on from Jonathan India one way or another, right? It was like the biggest, you know, a secret that everybody knew. It was like the worst kept secret is that Jonathan India was probably going to have his last year with the Reds in 2024, one way or other. He lasted the whole year, you know, because McLean was out, so they kind of really needed him. So it wasn't a situation where they're really ready to trade him. I feel like if McLean was healthy last year and they still kind of had that 77-win season, they probably would have traded, you know, India in the middle of the year or at the beginning of the year, you know, to try to get something else for him. And I think they got the most they could for him because I think there was they were going for another pitcher, but he was in his 30s, and I think Brady Singer is 29. He's an innings eater, which, you know, in today's baseball, it's tough because a lot of guys, you know, throw the ball so hard that, you know, one year they're throwing 180 innings, and then the next year they come back and they throw 50 because their elbow's all messed up, their, you know, the wrists, anything, you know, they have blisters all year. So I guess it's underrated move that the Reds they really want to bolster their pitching to basically last all 162 games. Because if you remember toward the end of the year, I think it was even starting in July, they started throwing out these openers like Buck Farmer and Tony Santillan and like Jacob Junis, like a lot of guys that you're just like, what are we doing? Like we're not. I mean, I get that there is some use to having an opener every once in a while, having a bullpen day, but it felt like it was like almost every day, or at least like 3 out of the 7 games a week had an opener. And, you know, Nick Martinez was the other starter that was really starting down the stretch because, you know, Hunter was kind of shelved. And, you know, I think at that point Williamson was done with his UCL. Like it was just, it was kind of like, man, we don't have the bodies. And, you know, God bless him, Lyon Richardson's still with the Reds organization, and he'll probably be called up in one of those games when everybody's hurt or everybody needs more rest in the middle of July and August, and probably have to throw 5 innings for us. But I mean, that I don't know if you want to like rely on that kind of like AAA plus guy all the time when you're trying to be competitive at that point of the season. So I think I'm applauding more the thought process of like, okay, Jonathan India, you know, he did well as a Red here, Rookie of the Year, you know, his rookie year a couple of years back. But what we really need, we need guys that can throw innings when we need it most, and that's, you know, like late July, you know, August and September.
Yeah, I feel like India's peak trade value was in June of this past season, and maybe they missed out, but I'm really liking the Brady Singer move. I think he really complements the rotation very well. And fun fact, Nick Martinez was the only pitcher to throw a complete game for the Reds in 2024.
Wow. He went 9 innings? I don't know, when was that?
It was towards the end of the season. I want to say it was the second to last or third to last start.
It wasn't one of those rain out 5. They made 5 innings and he pitched all 5 innings.
No, he pitched 9 innings. It was a shutout.
Oh man, yeah, I think I still remember it. Maybe against Milwaukee or something like that. Or
I think it was in Milwaukee. I think.
let me look. I'm looking at Baseball Reference. Let's see game logs. But yeah, that's crazy. It was the only one for the Reds.
He was the only one.
Dang. I mean, yeah, you're in that $21 million then, I guess, right?
Yeah. So maybe we'll get 2 pitchers to throw a complete game this year with him and Singer.
Yeah, that'd be great. Let's see. Where is that? Innings pitched. Yeah, well, I think it looks like it was against the Cubs. I think he went all 8 innings, but they end up losing. So
That's
they didn't
right.
they didn't have to throw in the closer at the end.
That was the last series of the season, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The stinking Cubs. But anyway, hey, you're on that money, and yeah, I mean that I guess gets us into 2025, right? We've been talking a lot of 2024. What do you think is going to be? We could do a couple of keys. Your top key to the season going into 2025.
Health. Number 1, health. If everybody can remain somewhat healthy, this team has a legit chance to do something special. Hunter Green showed last year that he really took a step forward in his development. Unfortunately, Nick Lodolo took a step back. If Lodolo and Green can be your top of the rotation guys, that's one of the top rotations in the National League, in my opinion. And then to throw out, if Andrew Abbott can remain consistent and not wear down, because I think he's got a ERA over 6 after July for his career so far. But he's remained, his ERA is so good at the beginning of the season that it levels out. I don't think he's had an ERA over 4 yet. And like he's got that. He reminds me so much of Cliff Lee. Just his fastball doesn't overpower you. He's got a really good breaking ball. His changeup is his best pitch. Abbott is a really solid number 3, and then Nick Martinez was really their main key to the door for him. You know, being able to come out of the bullpen when they needed him to come out of the bullpen, to start when they needed him to start. And he almost became their ace when Green was on the IL. And it's just, they have so many players that if they can remain healthy, and then like to go towards the infield, you know, Matt McClain missed all of last year and the last 2 months of 23. Encarnacion Strand coming off of surgery. I don't like saying it, man, but if their lineup develops the way that I think they could develop and stays healthy, they remind me of that team from the 70s.
Yeah, well, you were there then, right? You remember firsthand?
I was there smoking my cigar.
Yeah. For sure, yeah. And I mean, Nick Martinez stole the Reds' 2024 Pitcher of the Year from Hunter Green, even though Hunter got Cy Young votes. So that's kind of, I don't know, that maybe just because he had the longevity and stuck out the whole year. But I mean, I think consensus is that, I mean, for me, Hunter is the best pitcher, and Fangraphs and PECOTA predict that the Reds going to have kind of like a pitching regression. They had such a good year pitching last year, not giving up a lot of runs, not giving up a lot of blown saves. I mean, even though that Alexis Diaz's ERA was like in the 4 and 5s most of the season, he wasn't blowing games, right? So like it was kind of like it's hard to replicate, right? Like baseball, hard game to play, 162 games and almost every single day. It's hard to replicate that year on year. You know what I mean? So that's going to be kind of like the key to the season for me, is because I think the hitting, I think, will come back. These guys are young. You know, the sophomore slump was real for a bunch of them. You know, even Spencer Steele, like he hit like 230, even though he led the team with like 90 RBIs. He still was not hitting the heights that you kind of really want him to do for you know, like a second year full-time starter.
Yeah, Steer had a 2020 season with over 90 RBIs. Like for as bad as he really felt, he really wasn't horrible. It was just his average just didn't go the
Yeah,
way he wanted it to.
and we're kind of learning now. I don't know if you heard, like he's got that shoulder ailment, which they're starting to maybe think that he started having at tail end of last season. So like that kind of thing, like maybe he was kind of hampered by that. Hopefully, it's not something that's going to be completely ongoing. I mean, fingers crossed that that's like the only thing. And I heard that Rhett Lauder is kind of coming back a little bit too with his rehab or whatever they're doing, ramping him back up or what have you. It's nothing major I think for Lauder's perspective, but I think the key is to have that pitching, not necessarily be as dominant, as it was in 2024, but just not to regress, right? Not to have starters with ERAs in the 4s and the 5s coming out the gate, or even like for the whole year. If we can have good starting pitching, get us as deep as you can into games. The bullpen seems to be pretty decent. And they've added a couple arms with the Rogers guy from San Francisco and the Guardians pitcher. I forget. He's like also his experience closing games. So they're kind of adding that depth again. They're not blowing you away with the names of Austin Hayes and Jose Trevino and the Rogers. Was he the lefty from San Francisco? They're not blowing you away with these free agent deals, but they're going to be guys that they're going to need, like the guys that can eat up those innings, guys that can keep you in games when you need it. Sam Moll seems to be a pretty decent trade. I know as much as Nick Kroll, Brad Meter get it from the fans, like it was a pretty decent trade. Wasn't, the biggest, sexiest trade, 2 years ago for that trade deadline, but seems to be a serviceable left-hander out of the bullpen. So if the pitching staff has a good season, I think the Reds have a decent season. And that's kind of like how I feel, is that we don't want to like regress back to a time where we're just giving up 8 or 9 runs, with the starters and just kind of giving us no chance in the game. You got to keep it close at best, and hopefully we can eke out those 1-run wins with some timely hitting.
Yeah. What's a key prospect that you think will make an impact this season?
Oh, that's a good one. I think that we have, I don't know if hitting wise there's too much, because we had the Reese Hines experiment last year. We had
that was so much fun,
great week, and then he went away kind of thing. And it's good to get that jolt. And I think it's purposeful, I think, from the organization to try to have those kind of guys. They're not necessarily going to be everyday players, but I think, like, the dog days of summer, you get a little jolt in the arm. So I'm not saying Reese Hines per se, but, maybe if they got, I guess on the pitching side, it'd be Rhett Lauder kind of coming and making a difference again in the big games throughout the summer and hopefully towards the fall, and being able to, eat up those innings that, if Hunter needs a day off or Lodolo needs a day off, or Nick Martinez goes back to the bullpen because the bullpen's got some injuries or something. I think that could be a big, and I don't know. It's kind of hard to label him as a prospect, right? Because we kind of know what he is. He just hasn't had a full service year yet. So he's kind of like still in that prospect limbo where like we know he's got the major league talent. He's just kind of like in waiting because we don't want to burn him out. I mean, I guess if anything, a prospect that I really hope kind of has a bounce back year is Connor Phillips, because he kind of has gone through the ringer, being brought up kind of a similar way with Rhett Lauder late in 2023, looking good, looking like he's got the major league stuff. Totally his mechanics, I think he was retooling and everything, his stride. He was talking about, because he got, I mean, it's not necessarily demotion, but he got reassigned to like Arizona Fall League, I think, or something of that nature, where he was just kind of like, he wasn't in the Reds minor system. Like they were just trying to give him some, mental break or a physical break away from the game a little bit, so he can kind of get back to what he's good at. So for me, I guess then Connor Phillips would be a great guy to like have a good bounce back season, a good, good story to see him back at the Major League Ball Club throwing well again.
Yeah, that would be really good, because he had that game in 2023. I think he had like 11 strikeouts, and he was he was on. And then they depended on him to save their season, and he just, unfortunately, he's a rookie. So he couldn't handle the pressure, I guess. One prospect for me, I would like to see what the outcome. He's technically not a prospect, but Noelvi Marte to me has so much upside. Unfortunately, the PEDs, I get it. Red social media never lets me not hear it. I posted, but he's my header on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a huge fan of his. I love his game. I see a lot of Manny Machado in him.
Yeah.
I would love to see him, best case scenario, would play the majority of the season in AAA, no matter how good he's playing. And then in September, give him a late season call-up to be that shot in the arm that he was in 23. Because I don't think he's as bad as he was defensively last year as he was. Because in 23, he was making spectacular, barehanded plays, running, throwing out, hardly any errors. I even tweeted, Marte is going to be a future Gold Glove candidate every year. But unfortunately, he took a really big step back last year. The PEDs, everyone says, oh, he lost his ability to hit because he was taking steroids. They forget that he, pulled his hamstring in the Dominican League or Mexican League or whatever league it was, and got popped immediately after that. And I think a lot of that was he was still recovering from the hamstring probably. And then all the pressure of, you got to live up to this hype as a number one prospect. And he's just, to me, he could be that 300 average hitter, 25 home runs, and a really solid defensive third baseman.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a good shout because, confidence is such a fragile thing. There's possible that, even though he did get caught with, performance enhancing stuff, is that probably lost a lot of his confidence just kind of sitting out, not playing baseball, right? Because I don't think he was allowed inside the Reds organization facilities anywhere until
it was
mid-May.
Mid-May or late May, early June.
Yeah, so he probably just kind of just sitting around and doing nothing and losing his confidence in his game because he's not able to play type of thing. So if he can get back to that at all, get some confidence in the minors for sure. Yeah, if he can just be that call up or mid-season after the All-Star break type of deal, just kind of get back to it. That would definitely cause some different log jams in the infield because it was like we always you were talking about Edwin Arroyo being like in a log jam late, and we just draft shortstops every year. So I guess we gotta just figure out like where we're gonna put these guys. I guess if anything, we'll always have a good shortstop one way or the other, but the other guys just gotta get in the fit in type of deal. But,
yeah, he's got a lot of upside, and I'm not gonna speak for him or defend him in any way, but you hear of UFC fighters that get popped for these kind of things, and they say, I just take what my trainer gives me. So to give him some kind of defense, be more aware of what you're doing, but you're not always told what you're taking either.
Yeah, no, the culture of baseball is totally different. Obviously, they're trying to clean up the game, but especially he's Dominican, right? It's like the baseball is the religion there. So the guys got to climb over to get to just even the minors. It's a big mountain to climb coming out of the Dominican Republic. It's crazy. I did that piece on Ellie and how he kind of got his swagger, got his confidence really going after going in the Dominican Winter League. And the highlights that I saw out of Dominican Winter League, it's crazy. This year there was another one. The guy, Tampa Bay Rays prospect, Caminero or something like that. It's just smacked the snot out of the ball, and it took like 2 minutes to get around the bases. Everyone is soaking it up, and like the other team's just got to eat it. You know what I mean? I mean, you're not going to see that obviously anytime in Major League Baseball, really. I mean, we're finally starting to get a little more bat flips, a little more personality in the game, you know. And luckily, we got one of the good ones that's got a lot of personality in Ellie. But like, hopefully that will be like kind of Noelve, like, you know, getting that confidence back, getting that swagger back, and being able to contribute for the Major League ball club again.
Yeah, and I don't have a slide for this, but what is one bold prediction you have for this season?
So I've been kind of like workshopping some things. I was kind of writing some stuff down today. It's kind of not a bold prediction. It's kind of like I don't know. It's kind of I guess you could say hot take, but like my hot take is that Ellie is not winning the MVP this year. Like for this year, it's difficult because like the Reds are predicted to win 78 games, 75 games. So like if the predictions are to be what they are, Ellie could still receive MVP votes, having a great season, another 30 home runs, 60 stolen base season with a bunch of triples and acrobatic defensive plays. But like to win the MVP, you gotta be a team that's contending from start to finish, basically, or at least building toward that contention. So I don't think he's winning it this year. I do think he'll receive MVP votes because he's clearly their best player, and if they're anywhere near contention, at least competing for a wild card spot, I think he'll get votes. But I don't think he's winning it this year. I mean, we kind of talked about this a little bit previously, but 2026 NL MVP. I know it's not the hottest of takes, not the boldest of takes, but like, if he wins MVP this year, there's going to be a lot going right, and we're going to make sure that we get to the ballpark as much as we can, because that means the Reds are winning 90 plus games.
If he wins MVP this year, we're never going to re-sign him.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like if he wins early in his career, after his 6 years of team control, they're gonna be like, Ellie, man, thank you, but we can't afford you anymore.
My bold take, and I kind of touched on it earlier the opposite way, is I think the Reds will entertain the idea of shopping Nick Lodolo.
Okay.
I'm not sold on the idea of his blisters. I would like to see, if they're not going to move on from him, at least try him in the bullpen. I think he's got elite closer stuff. But I think if he doesn't remain healthy, if he shows, he didn't look great in his spring training debut. I get it, spring training, getting the rust off, not trying to overblow it. But he wasn't great last year. The blisters were really an issue, and they've been an issue for a few years now. And I think that's just part of the way he throws the ball. And does putting him in the bullpen limit that with less innings, or is it just a thing that's going to pop up because of the way he's throwing the ball? I think he's good enough that if he pitches well but still shows signs, I think you could get a decent player and prospect for him, because pitching is way overpriced right now. So that's my bold take. I think that they're going to entertain the idea of moving him.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they can get as much pitching depth as they can get, because I think that's the philosophy of the club right now. Not that pitching is cheap, but they can maybe win in the margins if they get enough guys to eat up innings, so that we're getting into the late months with healthy rotation or near healthy rotation that can compete for roster spot or for playoff spots. Lodolo, I don't know if anybody's saying that they want to trade him. I think that would. I think if you want to hear additional bold take,
let's hear it.
Because of last year's kind of not so successful signing of Frankie Montas, if it goes south, I think they're trading Nick Martinez. I think they get that off the books. I know he's just got a 1-year extension, but if they get something for him as opposed to having a bad year with Nick Martinez, get him off the books, send him, who knows? Milwaukee, I don't care. Anyone take him. But if they get something back in return, because it's just a 1-year, $21 million, right?
Yeah.
That might be. But that's only if things go south. We're not hoping for that. Definitely not wishing that to be the case. But he's the highest earner on the Reds right now, and that's saying a lot.
So what would you say about if things were going well? Would you entertain the idea of trading him then? Because he's 33 years old. He'll be due for an extension. He's going to hit the free agent market.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Would they have the ability to sign him again at potentially a higher mark? You might see $27 million, and he would be one of the highest Reds of all time at that point.
Yeah.
And maybe you could get a legit top 7 prospect from somebody.
Yeah, I think based on the roster construction now and kind of the way this front office works, unless he's having like a Cy Young season, like that's the only thing. Like if he's doing 21 million and it's a Cy Young like vote getting season, kind of like Hunter last year, but maybe even better, you keep him. You probably don't trade him at that point. Obviously, his market value goes way, way up, which that's a question for the front office if they're willing to re-sign him or not. I don't think they get rid of him if he's having a great season. If he's not having a great season, yeah, I can see that. Still, it depends, on like the health of the other starters, right? If it's just him and, Hunter and, Abbott kind of tailing off toward the end of the year, it might be difficult to get rid of a guy like Martinez because last year he was the only kind of guy left standing after a while, other than, like Lyon Richardson and Jacob Junis going for opening starts, in September.
Brent Suter.
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, shout out to him, Cincinnati local, but yeah, he should not be an opener. He needs to be coming out of the bullpen.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm unsure how I feel about it just because I know we don't want to get our hopes up. We're not a spending team. So if teams show interest, I would like to see maybe just entertainment from it. I don't want to see, we're in contention. We have, like you said, him and Hunter Green are our only 2 pitchers. I don't want to move him for prospects, but yeah, it's a good problem to have, I guess.
Yeah, I think the front office believes in this group. I mean, they're on the upswing, right? They haven't shown. I mean, with all the arbitration they avoided this offseason by upping guys' deals like Stevenson and whatnot. Like they believe in this core, so I don't think they're gonna. I think you're the first guy that I remember seeing what Reds really stands for. You know what I mean? Rebuilding every damn season. Yeah, like I don't think we're in that phase of the Castellini era, especially when you get Tito at the helm. It'd be a sad day if. Hopefully, this is just a podcast topic and not a reality topic.
Yeah, that's a good point. Oh, it's a good problem to have. Well, this has been the Red Hot Reds podcast. We are brought to you by Ohio Sports Talk. We will be with you weekly. So subscribe, like, and we'll be here to bring you all the Reds fun that you need to hear. Have a good one.